Stonemaier Games headquarters, i.e., my home. I'm Jamie for working with Stonemaier Games. I don't know why I'm so awkward today, but yeah, thank you for joining me today for today's live cast. I look forward to chatting with you, and I will hunt around as usual to find where the comments appear today, in case they appear in a different place than last week. Um, yeah, so actually, if someone could say a quick comment, just to say you're here, that would be helpful, so I can see where the comments are. Facebook moved them around last week. I hope you're having a great Wednesday. It's really rainy here in St. Louis, which is unfortunate because I need to run out and get coffee and cupcakes today. And actually today, Pieces Board Game Cafe and Bar here in St. Louis is doing their soft opening. I think they're reopening in full this upcoming weekend. Pieces took a break from being open. Pieces is an awesome board game bar and cafe here in St. Louis. They took a break from being open. They temporarily closed, another way of saying it, for COVID reasons because they wanted to be safe for their customers and their staff, which I fully applaud. And they are reopening with all proper safety procedures today. Or this weekend, and we were invited to join them for their soft opening today. And so we at Stonemaier Games, Joe, Alex, and I are going to go down there later today and have a drink and maybe some snacks and just and play a game this afternoon. Just a nice little company chat at Pieces. Pieces is where we hold our annual board game Stonemaier Games Design Day, and we had to skip it last year because. Well, not necessarily because they weren't open. They would have opened for us if we had asked them. I think if we could have done it safely, but I don't think we could have done it safely last September. But yeah, I'm really excited to do that today. Go check out Pieces and see how they're doing. Thank you all for commenting to let me know where the comments are. Comments are back to the normal place today, so that is great to see. Tim's joining us from Scotland. People are joining us from all over the world here today. So what else is going on here? I don't necessarily know if I have any big Stonemaier Games news. Let me look at my checklist to see what I'm working on, if I can reveal any of this. Uh, Nothing off the top of my head that I can see here that I can say without spoiling something. And as you know, I don't love to spoil stuff, whether it's accidentally or via a question here. I'm eager to share news with you about our upcoming products, but at the right time, at the time when we're ready to do that. Right now, the products that we're focusing on are Red Rising, finally getting Red Rising to everyone worldwide in terms of the collector's edition, and the retail release date is May 28th. So if you're waiting for the retail version of Red Rising, May 28th is the day. Exactly 1 month from today, actually. 1 week from today will be my monthly e-newsletter, the Stonemaier Games e-newsletter. And on that, I will finally announce the Between Two Castles expansion. I'll formally announce the name and what's in it, and then I will reveal details and photos and whatnot about what's in it over the next few days. Looks like we have a little kitty cat who's joining us today. Walter wanted to say hi. Hey, bud, you want to say hi? No, you don't. Um, yeah, so that's what's going on at Stonemaier Games. If feel free to ask questions as long as they're not spoiler questions, and I'm happy to answer them here. Tim says, "How do I look better in quarantine than before?" Thank you for the compliment, Tim. I actually just gave myself a haircut like 10 minutes ago, so that might be why I look a little fresh today, and I didn't totally botch it like I normally do, or like I sometimes do. The back is always worse than the front. But yeah, that might contribute to that a little bit. And I don't know. I've really focused on eating healthily, exercising, and taking care of myself physically, emotionally, and whatnot. I've tried my best. Megan and I were just talking this morning that we both had COVID dreams. We have COVID dreams all the time, like mask related. Like her dream was about going to a movie theater and not wearing a mask or putting the mask on. I had a dream about going to a play, and some odd things happened at this play and I like remembered to use hand sanitizer at the end of the dream. Yeah, it's weird. I think we're going to see the repercussions of this pandemic in our psychology for a long, long time, based on what we know so far about it. I'm curious if any of you have experienced that. If you've had COVID dreams, COVID nightmares, things like that. Yeah. Joe says, "What's the chocolate of the day?" I actually hadn't written down a chocolate of the day. What are we going to call today's chocolate of the day? So I did buy, so Lake Champlain always has a nice little sale after a holiday. They're one of my favorite places to get chocolate, and they had a little sale after Easter. And so I got some vanilla cream chocolate eggs from Lake Champlain, and I got some crunchy quinoa chocolate, milk and dark chocolate from Lake Champlain as well. So those, I'll call those my chocolate of the day because I'll probably have one of those today. What about you? What are you all indulging in today? If you're gonna have a little treat for yourself today, um, let's see. Edgar has a question that is Edgar. I'm going to read your question as stated because I think there is a big misconception about this. Edgar says, "I heard that Stonemaier Games acquired the rights to Libertalia. Is that correct? And any more news about it?" That is not correct. Um, the news that you have heard that came from someone who did a trademark search saw that Stonemaier Games has registered the name Libertalia. The word Libertalia. We have the trademark for the word Libertalia. That is not something that I've announced, but I've said it here because someone revealed that. I will reveal what that means much later when I'm ready to do that. But trademarking a word is very different than getting the rights to the game. It's very different than saying that we're making a certain game, even though there is a game that happens to have that name out there. Yeah, it is a trademark for a word that we have right now, and that's all. I mean, that isn't really news that I wanted to say. As I said, Edgar, I don't like talking about spoilers on here, and clearly I did not announce that news, and so. But I do appreciate you asking, so maybe you can clear that up. If you hear other people saying that we acquired the rights to Libertalia, that's not correct. We acquired the trademark for the word Libertalia. Ali says, "What designer had an influence on your games?" Um, a lot of design. I mean, a lot of designers, Ali. Uwe Rosenberg has had a huge impact on that. In fact, on my designs. In fact, I did a video. I filmed a video yesterday that'll come out in a few weeks about my top 10 Uwe Rosenberg games. He's had a huge impact on me. Rob Davio has had a huge impact on me as a designer. Um, it's hard to boil it down to just a few designers because I truly do learn something from every game I play, whether it's something fun and amazing and clever in that game or something that's frustrating. And I try not to do that thing in my game. But Uwe Rosenberg and Rob Davio are probably some of the top two guys that have had a big impact on me in different ways. Eric is kind enough to ask about my father. Thank you, Eric, for saying that. He says, "How's my father doing?" My father has been in and out of the hospital due to some complications related to a successful surgery that he had that he needed to have, cancer-related surgery. And the recovery process has been very, very rough for him. And fortunately, he's now been a full week out of the hospital, which is awesome because, who wants to be in the hospital? And so he is, thank you for asking about that, Eric. He is doing much, much better right now. Yeah. Ryan says that I made him buy Red Cathedral. Thank you? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Yeah, I did my video on Red Cathedral. I believe that was yesterday that I put out that video. I have it on my shelf over here. It's a fairly new game that I've gotten to play. Really, really rewarding game. If you like rewarding games like I do, it's one of those games where there's lots of good options, and you have to decide if now is the right time to take one of those good options. Because if you don't, somebody else probably will. And it's a really, really cool game. Chris says, "I haven't dreamed since I quit sleeping." That's rough, Chris. I hope that's partially a joke. I know maybe sleep can be rough right now, but I hope you're doing okay with your sleep. Ali also says, "What designer would you like to work together with on a game?" Um, I don't know. I really enjoyed working with Alex on Red Rising, so I would gladly work with Alex again. Uh, one way that I've mentioned this or I've answered this question in the past is that I like being the lead designer. I'm used to being the lead designer. I like having that role, and so there are lots of very talented. I mean, there's so many amazing designers that I respect, and I think I would have fun working with them. But they're also lead designers, and I could see two separately successful designers kind of clashing if they're both used to being the lead designer. Not in all cases, but I can see that happening at times. Um, so it's hard for me to say. I mean, there are lots of designers that I really respect that I think I might have fun working with, but unless we have a clear roles, it could not work out as well as I would hope. So, I mean, I'll throw out I have actually worked with Uwe Rosenberg. That was actually a pleasure. He designed the first version of the Visitors and the More Visitors pack for viticulture. Yeah. Tim says, "Do I have any tips for A Feast for Odin?" He has it set up for tonight. I haven't played A Feast for Odin solo. You mentioned playing Red Rising solo in your comment, Tim. So I don't know about it solo. Um, as for tips, I mean, one thing I mentioned for A Feast for Odin is it's okay. It's the number of actions is overwhelming, and it's okay not to try to focus on all of them. It's okay to focus on a subset of actions in any given game. Maybe even go after a hard to accomplish action or an expensive action and build around that one specific action, it is totally fine to do that in a Feast for Odin, and you can be very successful in playing Feast for Odin. So pick a few actions that seem really fun to you and maybe seem connected, and run with them instead of being overwhelmed by the 60 plus different actions on that board, which I think can be easy to do the first time you play a Feast for Odin. Connor's here. He says, will the kids of today end up more extroverted or introverted after this pandemic? That's an interesting question. I love your thoughts, Connor, because I know you have some little ones in your family. Um, More extroverted or introverted after this pandemic? Ah, man, that's hard to say. My nieces and nephews, so they've adjusted to life where they sometimes they're in class virtually, and sometimes they are in class in person. Um, and so I guess but with any kid, they've probably been more secluded during the pandemic than they were before in terms of their interactions with other kids. And so they come out of it yearning for those interactions and seeking them and growing with those interactions and becoming more extroverted, or will they have learned to embrace this more introverted lifestyle and end up permanently introverted? I don't know. And I know you haven't put a negative spin on this. I don't know if there's a bad side of that. I think both can be positive and negatives, and it probably depends on how the kids went through the pandemic. So I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I'd love to hear your thoughts, or anyone else who has kids or nieces and nephews like I do who maybe have seen some behaviors trend towards being more introverted, and if you think that'll change after the pandemic. Yeah. I believe reading out some delicious treats that people are having. Dave says, "What's my favorite card in Wingspan?" I'll say the Viticulturist because I like little cards and games that hint at our other games. Um, let's see. Will says to please tell us how the bird poll in the Wingspan group went. So, Will, I think you're referring to the survey that I posted a week or so ago, where I invited people to share birds that they would love to see in future Wingspan expansions for continents we haven't covered, or if we ever do a promo pack for birds that we missed in continents we've already covered that people really love that we should cover in the future. And Will, it isn't a closed poll. I appreciate your curiosity. It's kind of an ongoing thing. So Elizabeth will refer to this whenever she works on a new expansion. And if she ever has a period of time where she just wants to work on a promo pack, she'll probably look at that list and look for some popular birds that were selected by multiple people and use them for the promo pack. So it's not. I wouldn't say it's a closed poll or anything like that. It's kind of an ongoing thing that it's on our website. If you're curious about it, if you want to find it easily, actually go to the Wingspan page of our website and you'll see it on there. If you want to fill out a few birds that you love that you haven't seen in Wingspan yet. Daniel has a slightly spoiler question here, so I'm not going to read it in full, but he's referring to a certain character in Red Rising that we included as a specific color in the game, even though this character ends up being a different color in the game as well. And so this character, the way we think about it is that this character at his or her heart is always a certain color, always a specific color, and we have included that character as that color in the game. However, in the future, if we make an expansion for Red Rising, that character will be a different color. Yeah, I'll say it that way. Oh no, Joshua says, oh, this is bad. Joshua says, I recently lost 10 years of design work after a USB drive became corrupted. Oh man, I'm sorry, Joshua. He says, have you ever lost old design work that you wish you hadn't? He's been feeling a bit down about his situation. I totally, I feel for you. That's a lot of design time. Hopefully there's a silver lining in terms of how you can come back to it fresh, but that's really rough. It's tough to recover from that. I transferred to a new computer after around 10 years a few months ago, and I didn't lose anything design related, but I did lose a lot of emails. I use Microsoft Outlook, and I lost a lot of emails on there. They're still stored somewhere, but they're not organized the way that I'd like them to. So I haven't done that. I have probably at some point lost design work. In fact, it's really frustrating. Every now and then, I'll spend a few hours working on something in InDesign, and then my computer will freeze or InDesign will freeze, and I'll lose something. It's gotten better at backing up, but in the past, I have lost hours of work, and even just hours. I can't imagine 10 years, but even just hours of losing something that you just worked so hard on doesn't feel good. It feels pretty terrible. So I'm so sorry about that. Brian says, I'm creating a one-page sell sheet as I prepare to enter my game into some board game design contest and to share with publishers. From a publisher's point of view, can you share a few do's and don'ts that designers should keep in mind when creating a sell sheet? It's a good question, Brian. I would definitely, I mean, probably the number one thing I would say is to share it as a work in progress on some of the game design Facebook groups, because I think they'll give you some great feedback about it. I can say as a publisher myself, uh, I don't look much at the sell sheets. We have our own form that people fill out when they submit games to us. I know they're important because I think a lot of publishers do use them, so I don't want to discount them in any way. But yeah, let me a few do's and don'ts. I would so here's one tip that I'll throw out there. I don't know if other publishers will agree, but uh, I often look for something to take away from it, something memorable to take away from it. So I would recommend focusing on three major hooks that differentiate your game from other games. Don't talk about those other games, but focus on the hooks, the things that really make it stand out, and really highlight those three things. Because a publisher, I mean, they'll probably scan the component list, they'll look at the description, but if you want them to really walk away with something memorable about it, focus on three things, three big things. And if it's fewer than three, that's okay too. It's okay if you only have two big hooks. That's okay too. But really highlight them so the publisher can look at it and take those away from the sell sheet. Also, hopefully you don't have any art for the game because that's the publisher's responsibility. But I think it does help, or it can help a publisher if you share some art that conveys the sense of what you hope the game will be someday. Some people may definitely disagree about this, and you want to make sure you credit that art to whoever you pulled it from on Google Images. But if you've built a world for your game, you might want to show the publisher, hey, this is how I picture the world, and to give them an idea, because that will immerse them thematically, I think, a little bit into the game. Just a few ideas. Could be very different than other publishers. Edgar says, any games that I'm looking forward to coming out soon? I just got Space Race. Let me see what yeah, I just got Space Race. I have something else that I just received that I forgot. Oh, Wishland. I just got Wishland as well. Um, and I just bought my own copy of Dune Imperium because I love that game so much. And I just figured I should stop just playing Joe's copy. Any new games coming out? It's hard for me to actually tell what games are coming out in the near future. I did buy some Magic Strixhaven packs. That's a very brand new release that I look forward to drafting in the near future. Um, yeah, I'm not really. Not really, I have no idea what release dates are that are coming up soon. Jennifer says, so the Wingspan neoprene playmats coming back into stock soon. We are remaking them. We are, well, not remaking. We're making more of them, but I believe the reprint schedule is for them to be back in stock in August. So unfortunately, not all that soon. It takes us, for even a simple product like that, it takes us around 4 months to reprint it, another month to freight ship it, and so it does take a while for us to make it. So we're working on it, but it'll take a little while. Tony has a question about Red Rising. He says, any tips for a newbie to get his scores up? One easy way to get your score up is to slow down the game. This is kind of an artificial way of influencing your score. But if you are going for that 300-point score, I mean, the end game conditions are controlled by the player. So don't necessarily push all of those end game conditions. Just hold back a little bit. Focus on other abilities that don't necessarily push those end game abilities or end game triggers. Yeah, I mean, that's really, I would say, the number one tip of if you want to inflate your score a little bit for a sense of pride. A game that I played recently that I really, really enjoyed. In fact, I played some great games recently. Yeah, actually, looking at this list, these are some amazing games I played recently. I played King's Dilemma for the first time. Played 3 games of the King's Dilemma with 5 players, 5 total players this past weekend. Had a lot of fun with that. It is a legacy game where you're basically answering, voting to answer some tough questions as you influence the king of your kingdom, king or queen. They make it a king, but it could be anyone. Influence the ruler of your kingdom. And it is really, really, really interesting to make those decisions, to see how they impacted it. And it's group tug of war, a multiplayer tug of war. I love tug of war games, and it's impressive how they pull it off in multiplayer format. Then I played Seven Wonders Duel on Board Game Arena with the Agora expansion. One of my favorite games. I never played Agora. Really, really liked that. Played Lost Ruins of Arnak also on Board Game Arena. Had a blast with that. I own that game and have played it in person many times, but I hadn't played it on Board Game Arena yet. It worked quite well there. And I played Role Player. I bought and played Role Player, a game that I have loved for a long time, but for some reason have not bought. And finally I was like, I love this game. I just want to own it. I want to play it. And so I bought it and played it this past weekend. So four games that I really, really love that I've gotten to play recently. I'm very lucky to have gotten to play those games. I'm curious, what are your favorites among those? Um, King's Dilemma, Seven Wonders Duel, Lost Ruins of Arnak, and Role Player. I have two other topics, actually, directly Stonemaier related topics. I'll come back to in a minute, but let me look over for questions real quick. Mark says, I found Super Mario in the modular board for Scythe. How did you guys come up with the idea of adding these, among others? They're entirely up to Jakob. Jakob loves Easter eggs as much as I do, and so Jakob included a bunch of fun stuff. If you look really closely on the original Scythe board and the Scythe modular board, you'll find a bunch of little Easter eggs on there. Let's see. Tony has a question about the timing of the viticulture expansion, and he asks, is it coming out this year? And Tony, no, we are not on track for the viticulture expansion this year. That is looking like an early 2022 release. Yeah. Darren says, what recipe did you master over the pandemic? You know, I think I order in a little bit more during the pandemic because I've wanted to support local restaurants and because it's easier. Um, so I would say I haven't really mastered any recipe. I still cook, but I cook fairly easy things now. I've done a lot less in-depth cooking than before. So I don't know if I have one. Do you have anything that you've sought out to master and that you mastered during the pandemic? Max says, good evening from Singapore. I'm just wondering if you have seen any new trends in board gaming this year. There were many roll and writes the last 2 years, and I'm wondering what the flavor of 2021 is. You know, it's weird to look at trends from a publisher perspective because, like, we might have a game coming out this year that we've been working on for years, for 1, 2, 3 years, and so trends they're just odd from a publisher perspective. Because we work on things so far in advance, people might see them come out at the same time, but it's just a coincidence, just things that we happen to have been working on for a long time. Do I see any trends in 2021? I mean, I've looked at some like anticipated games of 2021 lists, and a lot of them are big miniature dungeon crawl campaign games. And they are games that were funded either a year or 2 years ago and that are finally coming out this year or expected to come out this year. So I think that will be perceived as the trend this year, even though it has nothing to do with what designers and publishers were actually working on this year. And actually, my prediction related to that is I think people will get more and more tired of long campaigns. And I think they'll buy less into giant campaign games and more into shorter campaign games or games that you can play over a few sessions, but don't require you to get the full experience, to play it over many weeks and many months. That's my prediction. Yeah, but we'll see about that. All right, I have a little break in the questions, so let me jump over to the last two topics. We're still my related today. One big thing that we launched just this morning that we've been working on for a while, and I say I need to give most of the credit to Dave, our web developer, Joe, our director of communications, and Alex, our director of sales. They have been working on, and I've worked on a little bit, the web store for Australia and New Zealand. So we use 4 different fulfillment centers around the world. But so far we only have one web store because Shopify doesn't really do a good job of delineating inventory between different web stores. And even if you delineate that inventory, if you find a way to do it and keep it updated, you can't have different currencies in different regions, things like that. Maybe there are apps to do all this, but we looked into it. We really did look into it, and we found there wasn't a great way to do it. So our goal is to have a different web store, essentially the same web store, but different currencies and inventory based on the fulfillment center in that specific region. For each of the regions. For US, US will cover every place that I don't mention in the next few items. US, Canada has their own fulfillment center, the UK and Europe, and Australia and New Zealand. And today we launched the web store for Australia and New Zealand. Our fulfillment center is in Australia, and so we have the web store in Australian dollars. And it's a big transition process because we're transferring over champions to that web store. Champions have sent me some very confused emails this morning, even though they have all the emails that they need to get this information right. But I can see how it's a little alarming to get an email saying, hey, your subscription has been canceled or your membership has been canceled, even though it hasn't actually been canceled. You just have to do a few other things. So it's an interesting transition. We're trying to better serve those of you worldwide who aren't in the U.S. Because every now and then, for example, you might, if you're in Germany and you buy something from our web store, it'll ship from our fulfillment center in the UK. But we only have one inventory level. We only have like one lump group of inventory uh, tracked in our web store. And so you might buy something on our web store that appears to be in stock, even though we don't actually have it at that moment in the UK fulfillment center. And then you have to wait a few weeks or quite a long time for us to get it to that fulfillment center and then ship it to you from the UK. So we want to fix that. That's one of the big goals for us wanting to fix this, among other reasons. But this is something we've been working on today. The other thing that happened last week that I spent some time working on with Alex is I had a great chat with Jen Bartlett, who is a librarian who is also a deep into the hobby of gaming and who really believes in bringing more games into libraries. And so I had to talk to Jen about this process, about how we can better serve libraries. Basically, libraries buy their books from distributors, and my hope is that libraries will that we can get our games into those same distributors so libraries can buy games from those distributors as well. So we're working on that process. But in the meantime, we also have a page now on our website where libraries can buy directly from us at a discount if they show their tax exemption status and give us some other information about their library. We're just trying to better serve libraries worldwide. Well, I say worldwide. Yeah, worldwide is true. It'll be easier in the U.S. for now because of the web store things that I just mentioned. But it is our goal to better serve librarians and to fit our games into their budgets, and to serve their constituents and get games to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford games or maybe want to try games at their libraries, things like that. There's lots of great reasons to get games in libraries. So we're working on that right now. Sarah says that she just finished The King's Dilemma last week, and she says it was an amazing game to the end. She says it actually ended with a tie for them, so we agreed that those houses got married. I like that solution to the tie problem at the end. I'm just enjoying the experience. I'm pretty sure I'm losing pretty badly right now, but I'm having a lot of fun with the experience. It has a really, really cool voting system in case anyone maybe isn't interested in playing the game and wants to check it out. I will have a video coming out about that voting system very soon. Tim says, do I have any updates about the Wingspan Big Box? I do. The update I got was that I will receive the revised prototype in mid-March. So we're looking at probably 2 to 3 weeks away before I have the revised prototype to show off. Kyla says, are your cats loving COVID life as much as mine? Are you worried about the shock they will encounter when life returns to normal? My cat's personalities and routines have changed very much due to me being home all the time. Yeah. Kyla's an Instagrammer that I get to enjoy her gaming and cat photos from time to time. And I post my cats on Instagram as well. My cats I don't know, actually, I don't know if their behaviors have changed all that much. Other than, no, that's not true. Because Biddy now is very regimented about when we eat meals. And so he'll come, if I'm like 15 minutes late to take a break for lunch with Megan, Biddy will come and get me and he'll complain. And he'll say, it's lunchtime. He'll do that even more for dinner. He didn't used to do that. Also, if we leave the house, even for like 10, 15 minutes, much less a couple hours, it completely throws the cats off their schedule. They're completely bewildered and confused as to what's happening. I think they haven't had as big of an adjustment because I have worked at home for a long time, since 2013. So they're used to that. And they had a change because we moved into a condo together about 18 months ago. And so they had that change already to adjust to after living in the same condo. But yeah, we've seen some odd things whenever we leave the home and come back. Tom says he loves the idea of the Stonemaier Games Design Day. Aside from COVID-19, any thoughts on satellite design days in other countries in the future? Tom, that's a good question. Last year when we, fairly at the last minute, canceled Design Day and just made it virtual, we did it virtual. We could have included anyone from around the world, and that's a neat idea. I mean, I don't see why we couldn't do that again in the future to serve the needs. And really, it's something that I want to do this year because we are going to require vaccinations. You won't be allowed to attend if you're not vaccinated. This is not me imposing vaccinations on any of you, but it's me saying that you are not welcome if you're not going to consider the safety of those around you. And there are some small exceptions of people who really, in terms of their health, cannot get vaccinated. Very, very small, but it is possible. I feel bad for those people, but again, I can't endanger my staff or the people around me for people who aren't willing to get vaccinated. So it will be a vaccination mandated event. And so I am already thinking that I want to create something virtual That could apply to people who can't attend, whether it's due to vaccinations, due to health, due to the location, things like that. Um, for around that day, it is a lot of organization to do design days, and so I'd want to keep it pretty simple. But it is something I already am considering for this year. Yeah. Laura says, "Do I enjoy escape room type tabletop games?" She says she loves them. What's your favorite, Laura? I'd love to hear your favorite. I do enjoy them. I've had a lot of fun with a few of the unlock games. I haven't played. No, I played one of the exit games. I enjoyed it, and I really enjoy Escape Room in a Box as well. And most recently, I played Star Wars, Star Wars Unlock that I really enjoyed as well. And one of my favorite games is Time Stories. Time Stories isn't quite an escape room game, but it has some similarities in terms of the puzzles and the idea that you are going back in the future, going forward in the future to a different place, a different time, and then trying to get out successfully. So I do really love Time Stories, and I'd recommend that to anyone who loves escape room games. So Darren was the one earlier who asked about if I've improved any of my cooking skills during the pandemic, and I asked him what he was doing. He says he's building core baking cooking skills for his cooking. Learning about ratios and baker's percentages has really helped me in the kitchen with making recipes his own. That's a neat way to think about it, Darren, to find a better way to make recipes your own. Anik asked, "Is there a sneak preview of the newest games that you're working on?" Um, You can sometimes find little hints of what I'm working on in my YouTube videos where I talk about game design. Let me think if there's anything that I can hint at. I mean, one thing that I have said that we're working on is a cardboard version of Rolling Realms. Rolling Realms is the roll and write, the infinitely scaling roll and write game that I came up with around this time last year when the pandemic was just starting, and we are making a printed version of it. I haven't shown like what it is, what's in the box, but I look forward to doing that later this summer. But I can say that we're working on that, and I'm excited to show it to you. Uh, Dave says, "My wife says you're my new man crush after really getting into Wingspan. I cannot disagree." Well, thank you. I'm just the publisher of Wingspan. I'm honored to hear you say that. But Elizabeth Hargrave should be your real crush there because Elizabeth is the amazing designer of Wingspan, along with artist Natalia and Anna are the artists who made the beautiful birds in Wingspan and brought that art to life. Nick says, "So what about people who don't take the vaccines due to religious or personal beliefs?" I completely respect that someone might have different beliefs than I do, but again, I'm not willing to endanger the safety of me or my staff or the people who attend Design Day for people who aren't willing to get vaccinations. For the same reason that I wouldn't allow someone to bring, say, a gun into Design Day or come armed. That I wouldn't allow that either because that would potentially endanger the people who were there. So, yeah, yeah, that's my stance on running a private event with vaccinations. It doesn't mean that I'm excluding you due to your beliefs. It means that if you're not willing to make the choice to get a vaccination, you can't attend this event. It's not all that similar to, say, an airplane saying that you can't fly right now unless you wear a mask. If you are endangering other people through potential spread of disease, that airlines have the right to say no, you can't come on the plane right now. Max says, "Do I know when Tuscany will come back in stock?" I'm going to put a big update in our weekly newsletter next week, Max, to explain what's coming back in stock and when it will come back in stock. Currently, from the information we have, it's definitely on the ships right now. We're just waiting for it to actually arrive. It should be back in stock in late May. And so Tuscany Essential Edition should be back in stock in late May on our web store. And feel free to sign up for a back in stock notification on our web store right now if you're waiting to get that. Let's see. Laura has, okay, I like this. Laura says, "We've played all the exit games and we've tried one of the timeline ones." Laura's the one who said she really loves escape room tabletop games. She says, "We're currently loving adventure games, which is played over 3 sessions. Such a super setup. Thanks for answering my question." And I didn't know that about adventure games, that they can have a little bit of persistence. I found recently that I really, really enjoy the 3 game campaign format of Hero Realms. That's like the length of a campaign that I really enjoy. Uh, I can get through it in probably a weekend, maybe a couple weekends with Megan. And so adventure games splitting it into 3 sessions sounds awesome. So I definitely need to try that. Laura, do you have a favorite place to start if I am curious about adventure games but have not tried one that you'd recommend where I should start? Josh, I've seen some positive comments about vaccinations here and supporting the vaccinations. Yeah, I don't know why anyone would not support public safety, public health. Josh says, but I appreciate those comments anyway. Thank you. Joshua says you've been a big inspiration to me and a role model. I hope to be able to attend Design Day or Geekway and play a game with you in the future. Thank you so much, Josh. I really appreciate that. And yeah, Geekway to the West is one of my favorite conventions. That's one that we don't run, but one that I attend here in St. Louis, where I basically just play games with 4 days for 4 days with people around the world. I love to play games with people that I've never gotten to play games with before there. Especially if you have a favorite game that I've been wanting to try for the first time, that's my favorite thing to do at Geekway. So I hope for that opportunity to play a game with you, Josh. Darren says, are you on schedule to launch another new original game this year outside of Rolling Realms? Currently, no. We don't have the two games that we're releasing this year are Red Rising and Rolling Realms. We do have some expansion. So we have the Between Two Castles expansion. We have the Tapestry expansion. Those are the two. So probably 4 new products this year, and hopefully the Wingspan Big Box. But it is taking a really long time to get this prototype together, which has me worried about the next steps in the process as well. Let's see. Alex says, all I see in your shirt is coffee. I don't know what else it says, but I already support that. Yeah, here's. It also says board games. So Alex, I know you support that as well. Coffee, beans, and board games. Dave says, if I played any of the Wingspan campaigns, I have not. No, one of the campaigns was created by a friend and book publisher Todd Satterston that I want to play at some point, but no, I haven't played any of the campaigns yet. I'm curious if Elizabeth has. Justin says, my question is, what was the game that turned board gaming from a hobby to something that you wanted to do as a job or career? And I'll say my answer and then I'll give Justin's answer here in a second. I was designing games as a kid, but I didn't picture it as a career at that point. I just thought it would be, I had fun doing it, basically. It was a hobby. As an adult, the turning point for me, not necessarily for a career, but the turning point for me was when I started to see games be successful on Kickstarter. Alien Frontiers was successful. Belfort. These were games in like 2011. A company called Crash Games, which is no longer in business. They had a game called Rise. Ryan Lockett had he had his space themed game, I think was on Kickstarter back then. I saw these games be successful on Kickstarter, and I had already been excited by the Kickstarter concept, but I didn't think to bring in my love of designing board games into it. But I saw those games and thought, okay, I'll give this a try. I'll design a game specifically for Kickstarter, and that's where viticulture stemmed from. But it wasn't really the game that made me want to make it a career. Was my own game, and it wasn't inspiration. It was Euphoria. It did really well on Kickstarter, and I had enough funds after Euphoria, after we successfully delivered the game, to make it my full-time job for a year. I said, okay, I'll give this a chance. I'll give this a year. I've saved up enough money from Euphoria and other things that I can give this a year, try to make this work, and if it does, then I'll continue. If not, I'll find another job, or I'll try to find another job. And so that Euphoria was kind of the thing that gave me the bump to give it a try full-time. Justin's answer to his question was, for me, and this is Justin talking, for Justin, the game that turned board gaming into a hobby I love was Tapestry. Into a hobby that he loves, not a career. Okay. He said, I remember getting a numbered copy from my family local game store and just being smitten with it, and I haven't looked back since. That makes me really happy, Justin. That makes my day. I mean, that's the thing that I wanted from Tapestry. I wanted people to open this box and be like, wow, I can't believe I got this game. I know there are lots of other amazing games, but there aren't many with pre-painted miniatures like Tapestry. And some of the things that I think I did with the design in the game. So I'm so glad that you had that experience with it. Alan says that he just got a puppy that is reddish brown and he named it Darrow. Thanks for the inspiration to read Red Rising. That's awesome. That's a great name for a puppy. I love that. Tim says, have I done a top 10 video about my favorite campaigns? I have actually very, very recently, Tim. If you look on my YouTube channel, I think I did it like a few weeks ago. So check out my YouTube channel. I think it's labeled my top 10 favorite campaign games. And yeah. Tim says his favorites are Shards of Infinity, Shadow of Salvation. That's definitely on my list. Spoiler alert there. And he's currently considering Sleeping Gods, which I had also completed at the time I made that list, or I was in the middle of it. and he says we're about to start the Rise of Fenris. Ooh, don't open any of those boxes in Rise of Fenris in advance. Be careful about that. I think some people open the boxes, start opening the talk boxes. Don't do that. Open them when you're instructed, and you're in for some fun surprises there. Okay, Laura is the one we're talking about, escape room games, and she says the adventure game that she started with was Monochrome Inc. She says there were moments in the game where we thought we were done, but the game has a great mechanism to help keep things going. I'll make a note about that. Add that to my list. Monochrome Chrome Inc. There has been a cat staring at me behind. I don't know if you can see Walter back there, so I'm going to give Walter a little nibble. That I'll be back in a second. I can feel his eyes on the back of my head when he wants food. Josh says, speaking of Geekway to the West, am I attending this year? And that depends, honestly, on their policy on vaccinations. I really hope to attend. I am fully vaccinated now. In fact, I'm 4 weeks into the Johnson & Johnson vaccination, so I'm feeling really good about my vaccination. But I don't want to risk it with people who aren't vaccinated. And so I'm hoping to, but I'm kind of waiting and seeing what they decide about their official policy. I do know that Geekway really looks after their attendees. So I know they're going to do a good job of that. Max says, can I ask if you prefer your job as a game publisher or as a designer? And really, I love the variety. I like the ability to do both. On any good day, if I get an hour or two of game design in, that's awesome. Typically, I spend between 8 and 10 hours working on all the other stuff that I do to run Stonemaier games. And to create other content, to create the content we make, but it's not necessarily design content. So I really am very fulfilled if I get a few hours a day, but I wouldn't want my job to just be game design, and I probably wouldn't want my job to just be running the business either. I like the mix of the two. Tiki says that she's looking forward to Rolling Realms. It helped me stay positive through the pandemic. Thank you for playing through it. Thank you so much. Yeah, that was why I created Rolling Realms. I had no idea what was going to happen with the pandemic, or if we were going to get to play games in person or at all for a while. And so that's why I created it, and I'm really happy with the result, and look forward to sharing a printable version that I will hopefully continue to play with people worldwide, because all you need is one set of dice. You don't need everyone rolling the dice. You only need one person rolling the dice, and people can just have their own copy, and we can play around the world. I'll definitely do some live casts where we play it live again in the future with the final version. Wayne says, would you ever consider selling the company? If you did, what would be your next thing? So if there was an amazing acquisition offer that let me continue to operate Stonemaier Games independently, that's something I would consider. I mean, because I would get kind of the best of both worlds. I would get the security of having someone having bought the company, but also the ability to continue to run the company and make my own decisions that I think are the best for the company, which is, I think, why someone would buy the company in the first place, unless they just wanted the IP, the intellectual properties that we have. So, I mean, that I could see potentially happen in the future. It's not something that we actively seek out, but I'm open to it. And your next question, Wayne, was, if so, what would be your next thing? In those regards, I don't think there would be a next thing. I think I'd continue to run the company and design games and just do stuff for Stonemaier Games. Yeah. Let's see. George says, have I tried My City by Reiner Knizia yet? I think Megan will love it. Megan's very good at games with full agency and polyominoes, and so I think that's what George is thinking of there. I have not gotten to play it yet. It is definitely on my Legacy Games to play list, and we might have a good slot for it coming up. Although really, right now, so I'm doing the King's Dilemma, and then I think we'll all be safely vaccinated and we can get back to finish the Charterstone campaign that I was running with friends. And after that, it'll kind of depend on the timing of when Role Player Adventures will arrive. So if that hasn't arrived yet, we might give My City a try. I'm very curious about it, though. Francis says, I don't know if you can answer this question, but I can try. He says, why are all your games so expensive in French? For example, Tapestry is... I don't know what VO is. So the MSRP for Tapestry in the US dollars is $99. And you list a different price here, Francis, but it's $99. But in French, Madigo charges $109. I think there's just a little bit of markup for the royalties that they pay us to publish Tapestry. But that's really not bad. That's $10 markup, which I don't think is that bad. We do offer Tapestry for sale sometimes on our website, which is probably where you're getting that lower price, but the MSRP is $99. Christopher says, is there any reason as to why you chose certain code names for certain games being worked on? Yeah, I choose code names that kind of hint at what the game is, but also I don't want to use the term mislead, but aren't so direct that they just give away what the game is. They might lead in a few. It might make you think a few different things about what the game could be. And I have fallen into using four-letter words for those code names. Patrick says, do I have any advice for a game designer who might want to team up with a game company to publish or crowdfund a game? Not everyone can or desires to do the publishing side of a game business. Patrick, I think it's great that you're thinking about that because really with so many people launching Kickstarters these days, I think sometimes people forget that being a game designer is very different than running a business. And if you're running a Kickstarter campaign, you are running a business. So I think it's great that you're thinking about that. I wouldn't necessarily use the term team up though. I would say if you just want to be a game designer, design a game and submit it to a publisher using their submission process. Most publishers have it on their website. Look up their submission process and submit the game to them, and submit the game to publishers that that you love and that would be interested in the type of game that you designed. So that's the typical process. If you just want to be a designer, you submit the game through a publisher's submission process on their website. Charles has a nice comment here. I don't always read the nice comments out loud, but I want to acknowledge them because the affirmations do go a long way. As you know from the internet, I get a lot of criticism and I try to listen to it and learn from it, but it's good to hear what we're doing right sometimes too, so we can keep doing it right. I think affirmations are good. So I'll read it out loud here. Charles says, I like a lot of your games, but above all else, I believe in you due to your transparency, exhaustive self-review, and community engagement. Thank you, Charles. I really appreciate that. I got a very nice email earlier this week from someone who started off my week very nicely by saying something nice about Red Rising. So yeah, those emails go a long way. We're people too. When we run, anyone who runs a business is definitely very much a human being, and it's nice to hear nice things sometimes too. So thank you for saying that. Let's see. Darren says, I didn't. So this is Darren speaking. Darren says, I didn't think Love Letter would really work as an app, but having played it with friends and with voice chat on Discord, we've had a blast. That's great. He says, any app versions you thought wouldn't work but were pleasantly surprised? Yeah, some of the lighter games I've been pleasantly surprised by. Like No Thanks. What was one? There was one like hidden role style game that we played, or was amazed by how well it played on the app, but I can't remember what it was. The game that I often talk about in terms of app integrations that delighted me is Seasons. Because Seasons, as beautiful as it is really hard on the tabletop to remember all the different triggers from your cards in Seasons. But I love that Board Game Arena remembers those triggers for you. And so it went from a game that I ended up selling a long time ago. As much as I enjoyed the game, it was just too much mental overload for me to really loving it on Board Game Arena, which I think is wonderful. Nick says, is there a designer that you really want to work with or publish a game for that you haven't gotten to work with yet? That's a good question. So earlier I talked about the idea of co-designing, so I won't repeat that part. But the idea of publishing a game from a specific designer, as I mentioned, I have published an expansion from Uwe Rosenberg for my game Viticulture. He co-designed the More Visitors expansion with me. Let's see. There are a lot of designers now that kind of have their own companies, and so I don't want to name necessarily any of them. Like Ryan Lockett, I loved. Keith Matasia, I love his work, but they have their own companies. Even Rob Davio has his own company now with Restoration Games. Let's see off the top of my head. Any designers? I'll look over at my collection real quick to see if there's anyone. Actually, I really like Tim Eisner. I think Tim Eisner does great work, and Tim Eisner has. Tim might have a company now too, but but I think his design work is really, really incredible. He did Tidal Blades as one of his games that he's known for. Dave says, do I ever try less in some games to match your opponent's skill level? I wouldn't necessarily say try less, but if I am playing against an opponent whose maybe is new, I don't necessarily know if I look after someone's skill level necessarily, but if they're new to a game, they're still stumbling around figuring out what works, what doesn't work. I might be more experimental in what I do, or even I might be more traditional. I might be trying to show them how to play the game, how to do like the normal things in the game. So I might take a very normal route, a non-adventurous route in the game. But maybe if they are not learning to play, if they're less experienced, I kind of get the sense that they're not going to do all that well. I might take a more adventurous route and have fun with that, and maybe still win. Uh, the focus of me playing games is not usually to try to win, but just to have fun with what I do, with what I get to create, and have some clever choices and decisions. So I would say that's how I would answer that question. That's an interesting question. What about you, Dave? Do you do that way? If you're playing against someone who is just clearly maybe weaker at this specific type of game, do you vary your level of play to match them in any way? John says, "What do I think of?" Oh, and Dan actually says Julie talked about this a bit on her show on Friday. I'm intrigued about that. Who is Julie, Dan, and what is her show? Because I'd love to hear Julie talk about game design. Offhand, I can think of one game designer who is a Julie, but I can't remember who you're talking about. Yeah, Dan, let me know. Post a link to that show that you're referring to. I'd love to check that out. John says, "What do I think of Humble Bundle? It's a video game license subscription where you pay $15 a month and get a whole bunch of games." It's an interesting concept. It's definitely not up my alley. I like to buy very specific things. Like I'm not a buffet kind of guy. I'm a guy where I go to a specific restaurant to get a specific dish, and that's what I like. So not really up my alley, but I can see how it might appeal to some people if they play a lot of video games, particularly with it, which I don't. Kyla says there's good cat cleaning going on behind me. The reach is impressive for that fluff ball. That's Walter back there, slowly grooming on camera, elegantly, majestically. And he's on Biddy's chair. Walter has completely tried to take over Biddy's chair back there. And Biddy right now is sleeping under the bed, so I don't think he knows. But he will know later. Dave says, any suggestions for games for 3 to 5 year olds? So when I play games with my nieces and nephews, which is my main point of reference for that, I like Blockus. I think Blockus goes over well. Labyrinth, the classic game of Labyrinth, I think can go over well with them. What else would I play for 3 to 5 years? I don't know if I have much in my collection. Cooperative games. I'd go with cooperative games. The Mind, well, if they, I don't know how young kids are when they can start to count. The Mind might work for that, but typically I would play games without hidden information that are cooperative. I think can work really well with kids, and maybe have a splash of theme, like Flashpoint Fire Rescue. I played that with my nephew when he was quite young, and he had a blast with it. Let's see. Keith also has a very nice comment. I don't want to just read nice comments out loud, but Keith, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate that. Um, Sean says he's having trouble grokking Red Rising, the game. He says, "What am I missing? What are you having trouble?" I don't know, Sean. You might maybe jump in the Red Rising group and share maybe what you're having trouble grasping. Really, the key is that it's two decision points in the game. It's how are you going to grow your hand of cards? What do you want your final hand of cards to be? So that ideally, every card combos with at least one other card in your hand. Comboing that with what cards to play, what cards to deploy, so that you maximize their deployability when you do so. So it's kind of which cards do you want to get out of your hand because they don't combo well, but they also do something great when you actually play them, when you deploy them. I think that's the main crux of Red Rising. Dan says the show that he's referring to is called Julie Ahern, and the show is called You're Invited. Is that a YouTube show, Dan, or Facebook? Where can I find You're Invited? Speaking of shows, I'm watching Rutherford Falls as my lunchtime show right now on Peacock and absolutely loving it. Really, really good. It's from the creator of Parks and Rec, and kind of has a Parks and Rec feel to it. And also watching Shadow and Bone on Netflix. That's a book series that I really, really love, and the TV series is doing a pretty good job with it. I like what they've done with the characters and the plot. Yeah, I highly recommend that if you like kind of young adult, slightly darker magical fantasy. Yeah. David says you made so many another nice comment here, but I think David has a neat thing here. He says you made so many awesome games that got me deeper into gaming. Thank you, Jamie. Scythe is highest up in my regards. I even took inspiration from my own game from it, a small one, but it's there. In one of your last live casts, you look at the Kickstarter, and my heart stopped seeing you looking at my game. Who would be someone you'd geek over? Oh, I geek over so many designers. Like when Uwe Rosenberg initially emailed me, that was a huge geek moment for me. Rob Dabbio, Reiner Knizia. I got to talk to Reiner Knizia a few weeks ago. We had a little Zoom call, and that was really, really cool to talk to Reiner. Yeah, those are just a few. Nikki Valens, who designed Legacy of Dragonheart, Mansions of Madness, got to email with her uh, about a year ago, and that was a really cool moment because I really admire her work. Yeah, all over the place. A lot of cool geek moments that I get to see, and still some designers that I'm eager to meet someday and geek out over them. And actually, I'm thinking of designers, but there's also publishers. There's also content creators that I geek out about because I watch their video channels. I listen to their YouTubes, and like when I got to meet Rodney, I watched it played for the first time. I definitely geeked out over that. Dylan says, I was wondering how you choose player pieces, colors for player pieces. Also, what are your thoughts on offering a palette of players that players could choose when buying the board game, like pre-order? That's an awesome idea if you're doing a small batch orders. Very tough when you're doing scale ordering at scale and working with fulfillment centers. Possible, but just a lot more difficult. Uh, the main thing that we do with colors is I try to choose colors that don't confuse players with other icons in the games that are also have colors associated with them. And oh, thank you, Dan. You linked to the Facebook Live thing. I will pull that up. Thank you for doing that with Greenbrier Games. And the other thing about colors is look at colorblindness. Colorblindness doesn't, well, I don't want to say it doesn't always matter, but sometimes tokens, like if you have a bunch of meeples on the board and all the meeples are the same shape, then colorblindness matters big time. In a game like Red Rising, where you can just put separate piles of influence tokens on the influence tracks, the colors don't matter nearly as much. But I do try to look at color blindness and look at colors in different lights, different lighting to see if the colors are still come through clear in different levels of lighting. But color blindness is a big thing that I look at. People are suggesting some games for kids here for one of the earlier questions. Dragomino, Catan Jr., Rhino Hero, Super Battle. I can definitely see that. My mom mentioned Patchwork. And my mom plays games with my nieces and nephews. And that's neat to see that Patchwork works for them, Mom. Animal Upon Animal. Yes, Animal Upon Animal is a fantastic game for younger kids. And I still have fun with that as an adult, too. Haba games. Haba games work well for kids. Tommy says, in Red Rising, can you use the orange and gray cards multiple times? Or when you assign them, are they stuck with the card you assigned it with? Well, Tommy, at the end of the game, you'll look at your let's say gray cards, for example. You'll look at your gray card, or you'll look at a specific gray card, and you'll be able to say, this gray card is also a purple card. And that is a decision that you have made, and that is permanent for scoring for that specific gray card. You can then look at a different gray card and say, this gray card is gray, and it's also yellow. That's a gray card and a yellow card. But you can't change that. Once you've declared a gray card to also be purple, you can't change that color for other reasons. But you only make that decision right before scoring. So it's not something that you make throughout the game at all. It is a gray card throughout the game until the end of the game. He says, have I ever considered making a dexterity game? I actually considered putting dexterity elements in some of my games that I've already published, but decided not to. Like Tapestry. I have a Civilization and Tapestry that had a dexterity element. Didn't find that it really worked all that well. And no, so I guess none of my games have a dexterity element yet. There is one game I'm working on that might have a small dexterity mini game, but we'll see about that if I actually end up putting it in there. Chad says, did I check out any of the time traveling books that were suggested last Q&A? Any thoughts? I added them to my list. I'm in the middle of another book right now, so I haven't read them yet, but I did add them to my list. There was not Incursion, but there was the one by Blake Crouch and the 7.5 Lives of Evelyn Hardcastle. That one is on my list, on my to-read list as well. All right, let's see. I'm just about out of time here, but let me see if there's any other questions. Tim says, have I had an issue with knocking over your cards in Red Rising? I think I've knocked over my cards once in Red Rising, but I just moved my because the cards are a little taller, so if you like hit the top of the card, they can all fall over. But I still greatly prefer the card holders to holding cards in hand, and so I just adjusted the position of the card holder, and it was fine. All right, I think we are out of questions for the day. So thank you so much for joining me this Wednesday to chat about various things related to Stonemaier games and gaming and all sorts of things. And I look forward to being back for our monthly e-newsletter livecast next Wednesday at the same time. And I will see you then on Facebook Live. If you have any questions that you think of after this, feel free to go to the YouTube version of this video. I'll put it up there right now, and you can post comments there that I'll be able to steal out more easily than on Facebook. Thanks.